Today I have some cross-hatching tips for everyone. This can apply to anyone that's a beginner or maybe even intermediate. So the first tip I have for cross-hatching is when you're doing your lines. Let's say you start your drawing and you're getting your lines in one direction and then you want to go over in the other direction as you're cross-hatching. Now while you're doing this, what's really important is to not go really fast with it. If you're going really fast, you're not going to be as accurate. For example, when I'm doing these lines, as you can see, when I'm taking my time, I'm paying attention to each stroke every time the pen touches the paper. Whereas if I just do it haphazardly and I don't pay attention to where I'm putting the lines, then the stroke of the pen isn't going to be very straight. And here's another example of that. As you can see, a couple of lines aren't very straight, but I'm able to draw lines really fast and cross-hatch really fast because I've been doing it for many years. You have to practice a lot to where you're able to draw straight lines really quickly like that. If you're a beginner, you're going to have trouble with it. And when you first start and you try to crosshatch and you're doing it really quick, you'll notice that your lines will end up, crooked like that. You'll have some that are, a bit wavy like this one here. Whereas if you take your time when you first start crosshatching like this, and you just pay attention to how accurate the lines are, and how straight the lines are like this, you'll get a better look to your cross-hatching. You'll get better shading. Things will look more realistic, and it'll help you focus better on your drawing rather than being so worried about rushing through it. And cross-hatching is a matter of technique. It's not a matter of speed and how fast you can get it done. And if you're cross-hatching and you got your lines going this way, and then you've been drawing for a long time, and then you start rushing, and then all these lines going the other way, it just doesn't match up right. And for those of you that don't know what cross-hatching is, I'll go into more depth about what that is exactly. So what cross-hatching is a technique of drawing lines in different directions. And what this does is it gives a shading look to your drawing, and depending on your drawing style, it can make it look more realistic. So for example, let's say I have a circle that I draw here, and the light is coming in at this direction on the circle. I'll draw a little sun, give you a better idea. So the light is coming from this direction, from the light source, which means that everything on this side is going to be lit up and everything on this side is going to be darker. The side farthest away from the light is going to be purely black. So when you start your cross-hatching, you can either go this direction across the circle, or you can go that way. It's all up to you, but I prefer to go this direction because that's where it's darkest. So when my pen first goes down onto the paper, that's going to be a darker spot. So if I'm cross-hatching and I want to increase my speed as I go across like that, I can get a light tapering like that. And it's a thinning of the line at the end of it. And if I just go slow, as you see here, the line is uniform all the way across. Whereas if I'm doing it like this and I just go quick, it tapers at the end and you get a lighter line, which will be helpful when you're doing the drawing to where the light source is coming from this direction, because the line's thinner at that end, and that's what you're going to want when you're drawing that. It can be a little bit difficult if you're drawing something that's really tiny lines, because as soon as it goes in the paper, you got to pick it up really quick. The first example that I'll give you here is doing cross-hatching with the lines that taper and go really fast. Then I'll do it with the lines that are slower. And remember, if you're a beginner, and you don't have as much experience with drawing and doing cross-hatching, this first technique that I'm going to show you will probably be a lot more difficult, and you're going to want to do the second technique that I'm going to show you here. So for those of you that are intermediate, or maybe you've been doing a little bit of cross-hatching, this technique is one that will be useful for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw lines in that direction, and then I'm going to cross-hatch this way. And these lines are all going to be tapering off at the end, just like that there. And now I'm going to go this direction. But I also have to pay attention to the light source. And I have to pay attention to the shape of the object. For example, if I have a shape that is rounded or squared, depending on that shape, that is going to change the cross-hatching that is on it. So if the light, for example, if the light is hitting something that is squared like this, the cross-hatching for the other side of that square, such as this, is going to be darker in that corner. And then as you go up, it's going to be lighter in the midsection of it, and then the corner of it's going to be the brightest there. So now that we have that established, I'm going to go back to my circle, and I'm going to cross-hatch in the other direction to make it darker on this side. One thing you also want to pay attention to, as I talked about earlier, was the shape of the object that you're cross-hatching on. For example, the circle, because the light source is coming this direction, you want to imagine it as a half crescent or like a half moon. Like that. So that side is going to be the lighter side, and then you're going to have the other side, which is the darker side. Light and then dark. So what I'm going to do is, when I'm shading the circle, is I'm going to pay attention to my line length, because this side of the circle is not as wide. I'm going to make my lines a lot shorter. So an example of this to practice would be not even drawing the circle. So instead of drawing that and then cross-hatching, what you can practice doing is drawing your lines that actually make the shape of what it is that you're wanting to draw. For example, if I want to draw the circle, I'll practice drawing lines like this. Right? And then I can just go the other direction. So I did that. I have shorter lines and then the more narrow ones. And you want to make the lines in the center wider than the ones on this side. So an example of this would be, for example, I'll just draw a line here, and that's going to be the middle point of that circle. And then all the lines going in this direction are going to be smaller. So now I'm going to draw my circle. I'm going to cross-hatch, or I'm going to draw my lines going this direction. And then now I can draw my lines in the other direction. Now remember, the more angles and lines that you add, that's going to make it look more realistic. And if you have lines just going in one direction all the time, that's a form of cross-hatching, but it's not really like a true type of cross-hatching. So to cross-hatch, what you want to do is have your lines going one direction, and then your lines going the other direction, because they cross over each other, and that's not simply cross-hatching. It's kind of like the game of when you play tic-tac-toe. Kind of imagine it like that. but imagine it more complex. You want to start simplified, then as you keep practicing it, you can make it more complex as you keep going. So for example, you've got your lines going, this direction, and you're practicing, just working on your shading and getting things look realistic and adding darker areas and lighter areas. And so once you've done that, and then you want to start practicing drawing your cross-hatching in other directions. And then you start adding lines going this direction. And then from there, what you can do once you have lines going this way and you've practiced going that direction, then you can add a line going in a third direction going that way. And so what you can do then is just go ahead and get your lines going this way. And now you've got a cross-hatching in another direction. And then you can go even this way again. And the more you do this, the more complex it gets. And you've really got to practice it a lot to really understand it. And that's with anything. And especially for me when I'm drawing, I have to actually practice it and do it myself a lot. And if you don't just practice a lot and you think that, hey, I can just do this without any practice, don't be lazy with it. You've really got to practice your cross-hatching a lot to get better at it. It's not something that's just gonna, come overnight. And it takes many hours to improve it. For example, say you're drawing an arm or a face and you're wanting to cross-hatch it. You've got to realize all the different angles that your light's coming in on whatever the subject is that you're drawing. For example, let's say you're drawing a part of an eye and you've got to do the cross-hatching underneath the eye, and you want to do some cross-hatching on the top part of it. So let's say you've got your eye here. This probably won't be that great of an eye because this is a tutorial video. It's not a detailed drawing video. So you've got your eye here, and right. So then let me draw the pupil. Okay, so now, as you can see here, I've got the shape out and outline done and everything. So now I want to go in and add the cross-hatching to this. So what I'm going to do is just imagine the shape of the eye, and I want to get an idea in my head of what this actually feels like if I was to touch the surface of that. And that helps me a lot with my cross-hatching, stippling, or any of the drawings that I have done. I really try to imagine in my head the shape of the object and how the shape of the object feels in my hand, and then I take that idea that I have in my head and then I put it on the paper. And that'll help you with your cross-hatching and stippling and any of your freehand drawing. So I'll go into more depth about how I do that in another video. So you have the shape of the eye, and you've got these little lines here. And this part here underneath the eye, that fold of skin, and the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to imagine the light's coming this direction, okay? And this little fold of skin here, that black line is the really dark area. And so anything in the middle section is getting illuminated and getting hit by the light from this direction. And so now when I'm cross-hatching, if it's something more complex like this, what you want to do is try to draw your lines like this. You can draw them straight lines, but I noticed that if I draw something that is a curved line for cross-hatching, such as faces and stuff like that, or an organic material such as on a tree or a leaf, I can get a better look with it. So what I want to do is I'm going to draw my curved lines where the darker area is, and then this area underneath it is going to be a little bit dark as well. The area in the center is going to be lit up by the light coming from that direction. So then you've got the area over here, where the cheek is and everything, and there's not going to be quite as much light hitting that. A little bit more in the cheek area here where the cheekbone is. And the way I'm going to do this will be a little bit quicker cross-hatching, and that's just because I've always drawn my cross-hatching with a longer line. I draw it quicker, and you have to have a lot of practice to be able to do that. But I'll give you two examples. I'll do it the slow cross-hatching, and then I'll do it the faster way. So I'm going to do it the faster way for now, and then I'll show you the slower way. And I remember this part here where the cheek is. I try to imagine a big circle in that area, and I imagine when I'm cross-hatching that I want to make the lines not go in that area. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross-hatch like this in that direction, but making sure that I avoid the area where that cheekbone is, because the light is hitting that because it's elevated up farther than the skin in the area around it here. I know I went into a bit more depth with this example than I did with other ones, but that's to help give you an idea of how that would apply to the drawings that you're doing. If you're doing something realistic and you're wanting to practice doing things that are more complicated than basic shapes. And if you have a hard time doing a drawing of an eye or a face, or you're just not really able to draw faces yet, you can just draw simple shapes such as a square, a circle, triangle, and just practice cross-hatching those shapes. So here, for example, I'll make it bigger here. So you've got your triangle, and let's say the light is coming in this direction, which means everything on this side is going to be a lot darker. So I'm going to take my lines, do my cross-hatching. And remember, if you want the cross-hatching to be really good, just take your time. And like I said, this corner is going to be the darkest. So I have lines going this way, and I have lines going that way. Which means I can make lines go up and down and that way. Kind of like an X. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw some lines going this direction now. And then if I want the corner to be the absolute darkest, that is how I want it, I'll be drawing my lines in this direction. You see how that gives it a shading look to it that looks a lot like how drawing looks like with graphite, charcoal, or if you're doing stippling. So let's try this on our square. Light source coming that direction. So now I'm going to do it with the circle. Light source coming from that way. And if you want to get better, really, you just have to practice a lot. And another great way, if you want to work on the cross hatching, is to just practice drawing lines in different directions. I covered this in another video I talked about, and in that video I talked about drawing lines in different directions in hand control. If you'd like to see that video, I'll leave a link in the description of this video so you can check that out. So what you can do here is just draw lines that way, practice drawing lines in the other direction. And this is a very simplified version of it. And as you keep practicing doing this, you can fill up an entire piece of paper practicing this. As you can see, every time I get to another line that is the same angle, I shift the angle to a different way. For example, I'm practicing drawing my lines for my cross hatching, and I have my lines going this direction. When I get down here, I don't draw the lines in the same way. I'll draw them either in a line that is completely opposite of that or at an angle. So now I'll draw it like this. And now I get here and it's like, okay, I don't want my lines up and down or this direction, so I go the other way. Just keep repeating that over and over. See, it kind of looks like the texture you'll see on some like baskets, or I think the only thing I can really think of that has this texture would be like stuff has been woven together, or like baskets or fruit baskets or something like that. That's kind of the texture I imagine when I look at this. Or maybe some kind of farm, or like a field if you're looking down from an aerial view. But anyways, these are some of the cross hatching techniques that I have for now. I'll go into more depth in future videos and really go into more detail about all the different techniques I have. For doing portraits, for doing organic things such as trees, and some of my other techniques that I have. But for now, these are some of the techniques that I use to help me for when I'm cross hatching. And if you found this video useful, let me know in the comments below what you think of it. And if you have any questions about this video, such as the way that I cross hatch, the techniques that I have, and if you have any techniques of your own for cross hatching, go ahead and let me know in the comments below. And you have a great day. I'll see you in the next video.